Right, start recording. Okay, right. Good morning, good afternoon, gentlemen. I don't see any ladies around. It's nice to see you. Come to the July the 21st meeting of the Hong Kong Philatelic Society and Hong Kong Study Circle. And tonight, this morning, we have a presenter from Canada, Mr. Michel, and he's going to talk about Hong Kong and the British Consulate Post Office at Bangkok. As all of you know, that Michel has written a very, very good book on this subject, which you can actually see here right in the middle. And I'm sure that Michel will later, he will tell us where to get his book. Before that, I would like to thank the Federation of Inter-Asian Philately for sponsoring this morning's presentation. So I think without further ado, I'll invite Michel to share his screen and to tell us a little bit about this very interesting subject on the British Consulate Post Office at Bangkok. Michel, it's yours.
Okay, thank you. I grab screen share.
Yeah.
Let's start from the beginning.
Okay, I'll stop sharing. Yeah.
Come on, computer. Okay. All right, I'm having trouble with the computer, so if anything goes ajar, please let me know. You should see I'll be with you in a second.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, now I have to do something to get a pointer.
Okay.
That won't work. Okay, do you see a laser pointer on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, it's working. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Bangkok, way back in the 1800s, was pretty far away for Westerners, non-Thai, who were there. And people, of course, wanted to communicate with their home offices or with their families or that sort of thing. So how did they go about doing that? And of course, this is what we're going to look at. So what I did is that, as was mentioned, I did prepare a book that deals with the entire process of the British Consulate Post Office at Bangkok. But what I did for this presentation is that I virtually pulled everything out that dealt strictly with Hong Kong. So what we'll look at is a little bit of history, how the post office was established, the stamps that were used there, how they canceled and obliterated the stamps, consular and firm chops that we'll see the importance of those, Hong Kong issues, of course, a few covers, and the all disastrous fakes that are available. So Bangkok is, it's not next door. It's pretty far away. I've got to move this out of here. From New York to Liverpool for a ship coming from, let's say, the States in the early 1800s, a fast crossing would take maybe 21 days and a slower crossing maybe 29 days. So it wasn't the speeds we have today. The distance from, let's say, Bangkok to Singapore would take something in the order of my screen is a bit too small here. Hang on, because I got my notes up and then I can't see everything. I've got to move you out of the way. Technology, eh? So the distance from Bangkok to Hong Kong is a little under 2,000 nautical miles, and at 10 knots, that would take 8 days. Bangkok to Singapore, a little under 1,000 nautical miles, that could take 4 or so days. Singapore then to Hong Kong, 1,400 or so, that could take 6 days, and Hong Kong to San Francisco, well, that could take a whopping 79 days to do the almost 19,000 nautical miles. So it wasn't next door. A little bit of history. Siam, I found it interesting that it had relations with European countries from a very early date. The Portuguese, after they conquered Malacca, they made their way up the Chao Phraya River to the capital of the time, which was Yuchua. And they established relations as early as 1511. And then just as a side note, then I stopped going on. Am I hurt? Am I still hurt? Okay,
yes.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
well, we'll continue where we were, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right. So the name Siam was first used in 1592. Then other countries started establishing relationships with Siam, and we can see a list of the different countries and organizations that ended up in Siam. This is a nice set of 4 stamps. They were joint issues issued by Thailand and Portugal to mark the 500th anniversary of relations between the two countries, which is extraordinary. And even the French came out with a stamp marking their 300th year relations with Siam, came out in 1986. The British established their relations with Siam in 1855 by the Bowring Treatment. So here's Sir John Bowring, who was the governor of Hong Kong at the time, was sent by the Crown to establish relationships with Siam. And here's King Mongkut, with whom he negotiated. The main things to note is that it permitted extraterritoriality, which basically means that if you're a citizen of, or you're a British subject and you do something wrong, you're not tried in the Siamese court, you're tried in a British court. Free trade and permanent residency was permitted. And then other countries followed very quickly after that, establishing consular services with Siam. And you can see, okay, there's the Americans at the top of the list, but everybody else is a European country of one sort or the other. Here's the British consuls that occupied the office in Bangkok, representing Britain, starting with Charles Hillier in 1856, and then several other consuls. I won't go into too many details about them, but they were an interesting group of people. One thing of note, it was a very dangerous place to be. Of the 11 British consular offices at Bangkok between 56 and 74, 4 died in Siam. 1 went home invalid, 2 went home and retired from the service, and the remaining 4 were constantly on leave to maintain their health. Cholera, dysentery, smallpox, malaria, and heaven knows what else was quite rampant in that particular area, especially when the river, which was used for everything, overflowed. A little bit more about Charles Batten Hillier. There's actually a street I found in Hong Kong named after him. He was the chief magistrate in Hong Kong and was chosen by Sir John Bowring to be the first consul in Bangkok. Unfortunately, he contracted dysentery and died fairly shortly after he arrived at a very young age of 36. I was in correspondence with a descendant of his who's writing a book on his life. Probably out by now. So here's the consulate that was finally built, and this is the Chao Phraya River. Here's the consulate back here, and further back we don't see it. There's other buildings for residents and that sort of thing. Here's the porter's lodge, so you'd arrive by canoe or whatever means on the river. Here's an important house. It's the boathouse, where the consulate employed up to 20 boatmen to use the ways to get around Bangkok. Very few roads, mostly the river and lots of canals. In 1883, they actually built a special little house on the water's edge to act as a post office. And just to show you some of the people that were interested in getting their letters out, here's a very nice image of Dr. Daniel Bradley and his family taken in 1864. Bradley was an American missionary who arrived in 1835, died there in 1873. And he was a medical doctor, but a missionary too. So he brought medicine, Western medicine, to Bangkok, and also brought a printing press with Thai type, and supported himself in many ways by running a printing service in Bangkok. So what happened is that the foreign people in Bangkok became aware that the British consul about every 2 weeks sent down a diplomatic bag to go through Singapore out to London with diplomatic mail, and one came back the other way, and they said, hey guys, how about letting us piggyback on your service? So of course, the council couldn't take that decision on its own. So back and forth with letters and how to do it, why to do it, and everything else. And finally, after 2 years, they said, okay, go ahead and do it. This was not uncommon. This type of service provided by the consulates for mail of their own, especially their own citizens, but others piggybacked on it, happened in other Eastern locations. Here's a very bad image of the Chao Phraya ship, a steamer that was owned by King Mongkut. In Thailand, many of the nobles had monopolies on this, that, the other thing. And that's how they, in large part, they're supporting themselves. And of course, if you're going to have a monopoly on certain goods, you have to get them out of the country. So the king had this ship he owned for a while. It eventually was sold to another group. But in the beginning, that's how the mail got back and forth to Singapore, along with whatever the king was shipping out, bringing back in, and the occasional passenger. Handling of mail. So initially, because it was such an important thing, the first assistant at the consul, as the volume increased, the first assistant, his services were needed, being a first assistant at the consulate. So they said, well, who else can take this over? They had a jailer, a chief jailer, and also somebody under him. So they told the constable, Gartner, hey, now you're postmaster. So he started handling the mail. By March 1882, an unofficial post office was started up under the auspices of the Singapore Post Office. And the stamps, we'll see in a little while, that were to be used at Bangkok were straight settlement stamps overprinted with a big black B for Bangkok. That actually also had considered a big black S, but the B won out. And those stamps could only be used at Bangkok. They weren't legal elsewhere because Gartner and his successor bought the stamps from the treasury for 90% face. So they wanted to avoid him buying them 90% face, selling a whole bunch of them at 95% face, and making a whole bunch of money and messing up the postal system in Singapore. Gartner unfortunately passed away in August '84, and ship captain Edelson became postmaster. And then the post office closed on the 30th of June, 1885, because the next day Siam joined the UPU. And a little bit of what was going on in Siam that resulted in Siam joining the UPU. Initially, there was no post office in Siam. They didn't need one. Most of the population was illiterate, and you lived your life in the same village pretty well, or maybe the village next door. And the only ones who really needed to get letters around were the nobles and the king, and they had runners who did that. But seeing the increased connection with the outside world, increased business, the Siamese saw the need to establish a post office. So in 1881, King Chulalongkorn appointed his brother to start setting up a post office system and a telegraph system. And by the 4th of August, the postal system in Bangkok was launched. And here's a set of stamps that were available. And you'll note they're totally in Thai. So not only the internal mail, the external mails, then they joined the UPU. And here's those Bangkok bees I was talking about that were used for not very long, 3 years and a little bit more than 2 months at Bangkok, but other stamps were used at Bangkok. The stamps of India were used because the Singapore at that time came under the Bengal Circle post office regime. And this happened up till September 1st, 1867, when the Straits Settlement became a crown colony. And then for a little while, they used Indian stamps overprinted with crown and their values in cents. And occasional Great Britain stamp was used by sailors that were in port. And of course, Hong Kong stamps could be used. Here's an example of Indian stamps being used out of Bangkok. Here's that temporary period where they were waiting for their own stamps to arrive, own Strait Settlement stamps to arrive. So they used Indian stamps and overprinted them with a crown and a value in cents instead of annas. And here on the letter, somebody's protected the stamp from being stolen by writing stamped across the stamp. I mentioned Great Britain stamps can be found. They're not very common. This was a concessionary rate that was available to military sailors that were in port. This is an interesting little notice from a local newspaper, the Siam Weekly Advertiser, which is very important because it lays to rest the notion that you can't doubt it. Hong Kong stamps were available at the post office for use to mail matter for Europe, China, America, India, and so on. So there's no question that Hong Kong stamps were available at the post office, but many of the large companies had their own Hong Kong stamps that they got somehow from Hong Kong. If you're going to have stamps, you want to make sure you obliterate them or cancel them. So these are the obliterators and cancellations that you'll find on Hong Kong stamps. They started with the British Consular seal. They probably borrowed that from either got lost, it got taken away, it got put aside. They said you can't do that. Whatever. They didn't have a c.d.s yet, so temporarily they created a 4-bar canceller, a piece of rubber probably cut with heaven knows what, a saw, a knife, and that's what they used. Very, very distinctive, not very straight lines, not equally sized lines. We'll see the importance of that shortly. That was not used very long. Either it fell apart or it got eaten by the rats or it got lost, heaven knows. And then they created out of rubber a checkerboard or chessboard variety, excuse me, that was used for a while. And then finally they got their c.d.s I had a friend search the archives in Britain for the impression books to try to find it, and he couldn't. So we came to the conclusion that it probably was made in Singapore and supplied by the Singapore Post Office to Bangkok. One of the things to note is that it has no index letter. So here, finally, here's Hong Kong stamps. Here's some Hong Kong stamps that were obliterated by the British Consulate seal. Black is the most common. Occasionally, you'll find it in red, and very, very uncommon in blue. So it all depended what the ink pad was that was available to the postmaster. Here's a famous cover that is just peppered with Hong Kong stamps, and it's been obliterated at least once, twice, 3 times. And there's a light one down here. It also went through Hong Kong, so it got the B62 cancellation. The 4-bar. So you have to be careful, like I say, for the 4-bar. There's other things that resemble it, but as I said, the Pakwa cancellation, or maybe even mistake a barred cancellation for the 4-bar. So here it is on postal stationery card. Virtually any stamp or postal stationery item that was current during the life of the post office at Bangkok from Hong Kong can be found. So here's a postal stationery card that's been canceled. You can see the 4-bar through the stamp. And here's a loose stamp that has the 4 bars. And I'm aware of only 3 of these single stamps. I'm lucky to have acquired this one, and I didn't eat for a week. Chessboards and checkerboard. Here it is on a Hong Kong stamp on the envelope. And here it is on the right with a red checkerboard cancellation. Another postal stationery card, this time with the Bangkok c.d.s. Over time, and you can just start seeing it here above the G of Bangkok, the frame started to wear away or break away. And as you get further and further into the time period it was used, the gap opens up bigger and bigger. A few more. This is from a newspaper wrapper. We'll see a bit of this. You can see SI for Siam under the stamp here. This is a unique $2 Hong Kong stamp showing that there was a need for high valued stamps. This was sold by John Bull. Other than the $2, the 12 cent is the highest that I've recorded. Chops. Chops are important because sometimes you'll have, let's say, a loose stamp, and it'll be the chop that you recognize as being out of Siam that allows you to identify it as having been used there. So these are all the consulates and the dates they were established at Bangkok. So I like this list because it allows me to know that, okay, we've seen Great Britain, USA, France, Austria, and German Empire hand stamp, but let's watch out for maybe one from Denmark or from Portugal or from Belgium, because they were there too. And that would be quite a find one day to find one of those chops, either on a letter or on a loose stamp. Here's that famous cover again. This time it's shown because it's the only recorded example of a cover with the British Consular seal on Hong Kong stamps. Here's one that I showed at a previous meeting. The only way we can recognize that it was used at Bangkok is that, well, it's got the corner card and it's got a Hong Kong stamp, it's got a B62. And if it weren't on cover, then we'd have no idea that it was used at Bangkok or through Bangkok. US consulate. Here it is, very nicely on several Hong Kong stamps. And here's the US legation. Now, the US upgraded their consulate to a legation, higher level diplomatic relations in October 82. So of course they changed the consulate hand stamp, very similar one, to legation, probably made in somewhere in Bangkok or maybe down in Singapore for them. And of course they use that on their stamps to prevent the stamps from being soaked off and resold. Beautiful, 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 beautiful block of 10, showing that, you know, here's $1's worth of Hong Kong stamps, showing that there was a need for high valued stamps to mail heaven knows what, through Hong Kong or to Hong Kong. Here's a really tough one. This is unique, and I'm quite pleased to have acquired it. Hong Kong stamp. Is it Bangkok? Well, if it weren't for this part of the Bangkok cancellation, you wouldn't be quite sure, because the purple underneath is very hard to see. What I did, I scanned the back and I did a mirror view, so the image can be compared, the front and the back, and it's very similar to this hand stamp. Now, the German empire furnished to its consulates around the world this type of hand stamp, where the only difference is the name of the location. And eventually they came out also with very similar stickers that would be used to seal their mail. So this is unique. Another thing to watch out for, in a very similar vein as to the chops of the consulates, is the chops of the firms. So here's all the firms that I've seen chops on straight settlements or Bangkok Bs or Hong Kong stamps that during the time period of the post office. And you'll notice I've highlighted in green the German firms. Germany and the German, various German states that were around at the time were very much involved in trading with the Far East in Bangkok and Hong Kong and elsewhere in the Far East. So you can see there's a prevalence of German firms. The blue are the French firms. The red, not too many, only 3. And there's 1 Indian, 1 Portuguese, and 2 American firms. So you want to know about the chops, because if you find a Hong Kong stamp with one of those chops on it, then it was used at Bangkok. Here's another unique one that I'm quite fortunate to acquire. You can see here Consulate, and here's part of the unicorn. And it's the chop of F. de Jesus and Company. The de Jesus family is one of the oldest Portuguese families in Siam. The firm was operated in Bangkok as early as 1877, and they were compradors, storekeepers, and commission agents. Filomeno Manuel de Jesus was the owner. The firm is not listed in the directories of the time beyond 1888. Here's Moeller and Meisner. H.A. Moeller and C.F. Meisner were 2 ship captains in Bangkok early in 1866. And in 1871, they went into partnership. They were general storekeepers, auctioneers, ship chandlers, and producers of soda water. Here's Windsor Rose. Now, Windsor Rose turns out to be a very common chop. So either they did a heck of a lot of business, or somebody somewhere accumulated the letters that were arriving in the office, and they were smart enough for collectors to get them onto the market. On 14th of August, 1872, Alexis Ridlich joined in partnership with Daniel Thompson Windsor as Windsor Redlich Company. The head office was in Bangkok and the satellite office was in Hamburg. They were merchants, owners of the steam rice mill. Rice was a very important commodity shipped out of Bangkok, and were agents for several insurance companies. Then Redlich retired, and one of the employees, Rose, joined as a partner, and then we get Windsor Rose and Company. Hong Kong postal stationery cards. I've noted 5 of them so far. Looking for more, but I've noted 5 of them. And as I said, anything available at the Hong Kong post office could be used through Bangkok. These are wrappers. Jay Smith, we'll see him in a minute, but he operated the Siam Weekly Advertiser. There's another one of his wrappers. The 2 cent was the rate for newspapers and was a very common stamp, but not that many of them have survived, and especially not on wrappers, because of course you get your newspaper, you tear it off in the garbage it goes, and then you read what's going on in Bangkok. Here he is, Revan, another missionary. He originally arrived in Bangkok with his parents from India, and then he was sent off to the States to be educated as a missionary. And he learned printing because he knew he'd have to support himself in Bangkok. And here's some of his covers related to his business, printing business. Here's some letters, and here's the newspaper wrappers we've seen before. So a lot of outbound covers, but there were covers going into. So here's a cover from to the Borneo Company that was sent from Hong Kong through Singapore, the Borneo Company office there, and then shipped off to Bangkok for whatever reason. Here's a cover to a missionary's wife going through Hong Kong or from Hong Kong. Here's another one. This Kama and Company, hard to research, but the little information I found on them is that they were out of India, and they were into shipping, but also into insurance. Like I say, it's hard to find a lot of information on them. Fakes, oh my God, fakes. Here's a bunch of fakes that were on eBay some, I don't know, 5 or more years ago, or maybe even longer than that. And it turns out that they were being produced by some faker in Stouffville, which is north of Toronto. So it was easy. They're easy to do because you use genuine Hong Kong stamps, and you can, some Hong Kong stamps you can get for less than 25 cents. And then you find catalogs, books like mine, whatever else, you scan, and then with printers, you print them onto the actual stamps. I bought a few of his items to find out where the heck he was, and I let a lot of the clubs and club members in the area know about what he was doing. And I'd like to think that the information got back to him, that people realized what he was up to, and he stopped. But why stop at Bangkok? Here's some other creations. I know this is Thursday Island, a red B62, registered mark, and other prized cancellations on Hong Kong stamp. And unfortunately, many of these fooled collectors. So there's going to be some really unhappy people when they come to sell. A book. Yes, I've talked about the book before. Thank you for your patience and allowing me to do that. The book was done through the Stuart Rossler Trust. Tremendous people to work with. I spent about 6 months working with an editor that just was tremendous in making the book the best that it could possibly be. I don't sell copies of the book. If you want a copy, you go to the Stuart Rossler Trust As of maybe 2 weeks ago, they still had something like 30 copies left from a print run of 150. And also, I'm proud and happy to say that at CAPEX, the book did very well in the literature competition. It placed third. It got a gold, which totally unexpected on my part. Very happy with that. And you don't write a book like that alone. Tremendous number of people contributed, helped with suggestions, with modifications, with images, and that sort of thing. And this is just some of the names there you'll recognize.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you write a book, it's frozen. So I said, what do I do? I'm still finding things. The book, I really concentrated on outgoing mail. And I thought about it after the book was published, and I said, holy cow, there's a bunch of incoming mail. And I didn't talk about that at all in the book. So here I have a website where I list new finds. People write to me, they find my email address is on the back of the book. They write to me, they say, I don't agree with that, or I have this problem. What do you think of this? Or there's a mistake on this page. And I say, hey, that's great. We'll note it here, correct it here. We'll discuss your point. And this is a live website, and heaven knows it might serve as a supplement to the book one day. So thank you very much for watching.
Oh, thank you.
Okay,
question time, of course.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Michel, it's an excellent presentation, and I look forward to get a copy of your book from the Stuart Rossiter Fund. And it's question time, and I'd like to fire off the first question, if I may. You actually showed some stationary Hong Kong QV stationary cards with the Bangkok cancels. Were those actually sold at the post office? Because you showed a little newspaper clip to say that the Hong Kong stamps were showed.
There's no list that I've seen of what they had at the post office. My suspicion is that these weren't sold at the post office, that they were acquired by individuals who were traveling through Hong Kong, or businesses that could write to their agents in Hong Kong and say, why don't you send us this number of stamps and this number of postal stationery cards. But there's no indication as to exactly where they came from.
So any kinds of Hong Kong stamps were valid for postage at the Bangkok post office?
Yes, if the letter was going through Hong Kong, then any
sort of, yeah.
Yes, and one thing we didn't talk about is there was a subscription service to support the post office at the consulate. A number of I think it was something like 15 or so of the larger companies paid, I don't know how much every year to keep the post office running. And although I've never seen it, I wouldn't be surprised that beyond the stamps, there might have been a fee charged, but I have not seen anything that supports that.
Very, very, very interesting. Yes, I agree. You showed a number of forgeries of the Bangkok cancels, etc. And I think the collectors got to be very careful of these fake cancels, because they are quite pricey, even though they were sold as almost genuine price if the people are not aware of their status.
It's shameful. Just last week, there were a set of I don't know, maybe 10 Bangkok stamps that were sold as not what do they call them? Not reprints, reproductions. And they sold for a high price. And I wouldn't be surprised over the next couple of weeks, they're going to start appearing individually on eBay or elsewhere to be sold to collectors.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to be careful.
Yeah. Well, I know that there is a guy actually selling all these. There is labeled reproductions or forgeries or whatever, but there's still buyers. Wanting that kind of stuff and pay a quite high price for them. Anyway, so that's another story. Whether they end up winning it and not paying for it, realizing they are not the real stamps, I don't know. Anyhow, that's very interesting. Anybody have any questions for Michel? Oh, you actually
happy collecting, folks.
Yeah, no, I have another questions about the B overprint. It's slightly outside the scope of your talk. So you said that were they available at a discount or something? Did you
the B overprints, the B overprint stamps, which we just saw in passing because they were particularly Bangkok.
Yes.
The deal with the post office in Singapore was that the postmasters had to buy the stamps from the Treasury. So the Treasury would go into their safe and pull out whatever they had in way of surplus stamps or stamps returned from closed post offices or whatnot. They always had some. And they would overprint them with a big black B, and he would buy them at 90% face.
Right.
So he would get a 10% discount on the stamps. And initially, the deal was that he was supposed to buy them in minimum of 60, which is, I think the straight settlement stamps were printed 60, 60, 60, 60, large sheet. So it would have been a quarter sheet. But the evidence from a fellow called LeMay back in 1918, I think it was, wrote an article in which he was able to get through the post office information about the printing, number printed, and the shipping dates. And there's indications that very few of them were printed in minimum of 60. Even there's one place where a single stamp was printed over printed B. And according to Garfield Porch, who was in Toronto here, who was in the printing industry, these stamps, because of the small either blocks or small number of stamps, not big sheets, they weren't printed in a regular printing press. They were printed in a hand press, where it's known that the Bs were done in 3, and they were put in the press, and then the printer would have to put the stamps over it, and then roll the big heavy drum over it, print the B, unroll it, and then put it aside, and then print the next ones.
So basically, they're printed a few at a time.
Oh yeah.
Not in a complete font, whatever 60 by 60 or something like that.
Yeah. No, it just was not worthwhile because in total there were about 55,000 B overprints produced during the 2 years and a couple of months.
Right.
And it's just not worthwhile.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
But one thing I find interesting, I mentioned in passing that the post office closed on the 30th of June, 1885. And there is, you would have thought that there were already collectors and people who were knowledgeable of the interest in the B overprints. And that's why there's several large blocks of mint B overprints that appear every once in the market. They would go and they would buy a whole sheet or whatever, and then hopefully put it aside and make money. But you would think that they would have known that the post office was closing on the 30th, and they would have swarmed there to say, well, okay, let's mail out 5 or 6 or 10 letters just so we get the last day of use of it. But there is not a single one that has appeared. I used to collect Heligoland. And when Heligoland stopped being a British colony. It was returned, it was traded to Germany 10th of August, 1890, I believe it was, but don't quote me on that. The amount of philatelic material that was produced on that last day was just unbelievable. So I don't understand that.
Right. Okay. Any more questions before we move on? Right. Okay.
I'll make a comment. I'll make a little comment. I've witnessed this talk on a few occasions, including when Michel presented it at CAPEX at the Hong Kong Study Circle meeting. And you know what? Every time I listen to Michel's talk, I learn something new. There is so much complexity and so much detail to the studies that he's done. It's not a problem for me to see it over and over again. So thank you, Michel, for doing that great work. I'll say one more thing. When I was at London 2022, a couple of the dealers told me this is going to be the Bangkok Bible for the next while, because, you know, stamp dealers need to know what's real and what's genuine, and what's contrived and fake. And this is the Bible for that. So well done, Michel.
Oh, thank you very much, Ingo. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. It's fascinating talk on this difficult subject, and really just shows that Michel has done so much work on the subject. And I thank you again for doing this presentation. Okay. So if no more questions, I'd like to move on to the next. It's just a smaller topic. That there's something I've done during the last maybe decade or so. So if I just like to share my screen. Okay, not this one. Stop share. Where is it? Share screen. Oh yes, this one. No. Okay. Right. Yeah. Can you see it?
Yeah, we see the introductory slide.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, this is something I've been doing for quite some time. While looking for an example of this very elusive date stamp, always finding it the price very high at auctions, especially in recent years. So anyway, I'm going to. This is basically a simple survey of the number of existing covers of this what we call the small broken ring hand stamp of Hong Kong. Okay, look. Right, the first slide. Now, why is it elusive? Elusive means not many find. Webb actually recorded 6 examples in his book, which of course, is such a long time ago. There are a few more that have turned up. And it's thought to be the hardest one to find in the Hong Kong Queen Victoria period date stamp, and a key item for Hong Kong postmark collection, obviously. It is probably intended as the matching date stamp to the small crown paid at Hong Kong mark, which was actually sent on the June 16, 1852. But why was it sent 5 years after the small crown paid at Hong Kong? I have no idea. Perhaps because at that time, when the small crown paid at Hong Kong, when it was sent in 1852, maybe another one was sent and it got lost, or maybe, I don't know, but usually they were sent in pairs. As you know, that with the large crown, there's a large so-called the type 7. With the medium crown paid at Hong Kong, you have a type 9, which is a slightly smaller size, also broken wing. And why wasn't one sent with the small paid at Hong Kong, the crown paid at Hong Kong? I have no idea. Maybe the one was sent and it got lost. It's possible, but there's nothing really rare about the design. I mean, it's just a general design at the time of the British colonies, and you can actually see an example on the London GPO proof book, which I'll show later. And it was actually sent out on the 17th of October, 1857, by the P&O Indus, which left Southampton on the 20th, and it was carried to Hong Kong by the P&O Cadiz on the 13th of December, 1857. So if you get anything earlier than the 13th of December, it's probably is a forgery or something. Anyway, okay. So if you see next the slide, and then you can see actually it's a general design. At the time, you can see one from the St. Thomas, which is looking the same, Tenerife looking pretty the same. And you can see here actually on the first line, actually you see paid at Tenerife, which is a small crown circle, and the date stamp. So they were actually sent in pairs. So my theory was maybe it was left out or forgotten or lost or something. And then you can see all the slightly different designs from the other British colonies. And this is actually a page of the London proof book, which you can if you go to the archive, you can still find it. It's a photocopy, unfortunately. Okay, so the Type 12, so-called Webb Type 12 date stamp. It's found on both outgoing and incoming letters. Now, the earliest recorded date by Webb is 15th of December, 1857. Now, I'm going to talk about this date because I've never actually seen a copy, an example of the c.d.s on this date on cover. And the last recorded date was 1st of June, 1859. Now, later, Dr. Hans Schoenfeld actually subdivided Type 12 into 12 with no index letter the day before the month configuration, and then 12A, which is a slight variant, is the same c.d.s, but with the index C inserted, and the month before the date configuration. Now, the earliest recorded date by Schoenfeld, Type 12, which is the one without index letter and day before month, is still the same. I think I probably talked too much. Sorry about that. Anyway, we'll try again. Yeah, yeah. I think it probably Schoenfeld probably got the date from Webb, copied from Webb, and he probably never actually seen this cover with the date. And then of course the 12A, which is one of the index letter C, is April the 12th, 59. So which I don't have unfortunately a photocopy record of it. And the last date, recorded date by both for Schoenfeld for both 12 and 12A is 5th of June 1859, which I feel a little bit uncertain that he's actually talking about the same thing. I just can't believe that on the same date, you know, one with the index C and one without. So there must be some mistake. Maybe the last date here is actually it's a 12A actually with the index letter C. Anyway, we show some examples. 1858, the inward one. Now look, very interesting. The London Transit c.d.s is actually December the 15th, 1857. The same date as the earliest recorded date of Webb's and Schoenfeld. Now, is that coincidence, or maybe it was just a reporting? Obviously, Webb's got his report from somebody, and maybe that person actually made a mistake and quoted this as the earliest date. Maybe it's just maybe a coincidence. But I mean, if you guys happen to look through the auction catalogs and you find a December the 15th, 1857 example, kindly let me know. But this is the this is one which is actually dated 11th of February 1857. And this is the so-called the type 12 without the index C. Okay, this is actually an incoming cover from Boston to Hong Kong. It went by the Niagara to the UK, and then by the P&O to Hong Kong. This actually, you can find it, it was actually recently sold at the Robert Siegel, the fantastic Magnolia sale in June this year, and it was sold for a whopping price of $13,500. That's a lot of money for an example of this. Anyway, this is the one. And we've got another inward cover, which is also slightly later date, the same. This is type 12 without index letter C. And this actually is an incoming cover again to Foochow. It's quite a rare destination, but obviously this is a military cover, and it was actually sold at the Cavendish Gilbert Wheat sale and in 2009 with the Webb type 12 struck on the back of the envelope. It was actually opened up. Right, and this is another example of the type 12 without the index letter C and say before the month. And this is actually come from a very famous that Powhatan correspondence addressed to Mr. Potts in the naval storekeeper on the frigate in Hong Kong. So there are a number of interesting covers from the same correspondence, all framed with the 5-cent US stamp, which actually paid for the local rate. And then it was just sent unpaid to Hong Kong. So there was a charge to pay upon arrival. So this is an example in 1858. Right. So this is an outward example of the usage. And it's a type 12, so-called, without the index letter C. And then you see that it's actually used with a small paid Hong Kong mark, and this is obviously a prepaid letter to Hamburg, prepaid 1 shilling, and sent via Trieste. And obviously there's a charge to pay on arrival. I won't go into details of the rates, as this talk is basically about the survey of the type 12 mark. And this is actually a new find, which the photograph I took at, I think it's a Jakarta, is an exhibition of somebody's exhibit. I mean, and then I just walked through the exhibits and they said, wow, he's got something really nice there. And it's just, unfortunately, the picture isn't the best because there are a lot more reflections, and he's got this cellophane wrapped around his pages, so it's very hard. But you can actually see the type 12 c.d.s used as a dispatch with a small paid at Hong Kong. Interestingly, this is actually sent as a private. By private ship, you see, by His Netherlands Majesty steamer, Medusa, is actually written on top here, from Hong Kong to Batavia, paying the 8-pence double letter ship letter rate, and there's also 72 Juton to pay arrival charge, and there is this mark here which says unpaid ship letter. What's this? Sea brief only franket, which is a standard type used for unpaid.
Well, that's interesting.
Right.
Is that Andrew?
Yeah. I don't know what happened. Anyway, it must be a bad night. Just after a little break, we go on to the next one, which is another outgoing letter from 1850.
We don't, Andrew.
Yes.
The screen we see. Okay,
yes.
You're back. You weren't back yet. Okay, you're back.
Yeah, right. Okay, I'm back. Okay. So
okay.
I'm just showing the next one after this so-called the Jakarta fine, with another letter, which is an outgoing letter to London, which is showing again the use of the small crown paid and the c.d.s. This was actually sold in 2008 John Bull sale. For that kind of price, it's still very high, but comparatively, it looks like rather cheap with the current pricing. Anyhow, this is another one. It's a Zurich Asia sale. It's another outgoing cover, and again showing the association with the small paid at Hong Kong and the Webb Type 12 to Bombay. Very, very familiar correspondence, but this one has got a nice touch. The Type 12 used as a dispatch. So now to the 59. Again, you see the same correspondence. Okay, the frigate, the Powhatan correspondence with the 5-cent US stamp, and then that as an arrival c.d.s. of the February 27, 59. And then another one, a similar one, but this one, and now the configuration has changed. If you notice that this is actually the day and the month, and this one is the month and day. So that's why with the index letter C, that's why the Dr. Schoenfeld actually called this Type 12A. Okay, so this is 59, another inward. Unfortunately, I don't have the back of the cover, but this is again from the Cavendish the sale. This incoming cover to Shanghai and redirected to Ningpo. And just to move quickly, and there's another inward cover with the Type 12A. And then, of course, this one actually I do not have an example, a photocopy or a scan. This is actually when Mr. Pearson recorded a cover from Guernsey to Hong Kong. The date is exactly the same as the previous one. Obviously, you know, it's from the same ship, carried in from the same ship. But if anybody know where it is, you have an example of this this cover, I would like to know from you. And this is the inward one, okay, showing another inward one. Now this is actually the latest date known, which is June the 5th. And not only is the latest known, it's also one in blue back. It's a blue back color. It was sold recently at the beginning of this year at Spink. Very obviously, this is a large correspondence actually from Hamburg using the Turner, Texas mail system to via France to Canton, and then there are a number of covers from this correspondence, and this is probably the only one with the Webb Type 12 as an arrival. And then there's another inward one. It's exactly on the same date. I'm not sure whether this is blue back. It's likely, but it's unfortunately this is a scan. And you can see this on the back as an arrival marking from France. It's also the latest known, possibly in blue back. But it probably is, because I mean it's unlikely that they'll change the impact through, you know, just on the same day. And then this one is also is an outward on outward correspondence is actually unpaid letter to New York from Hong Kong, and there's the mark on the back, this is definitely a blue black color. So actually from the May to what they let's see, from May the 21st to about June, they actually used a blue black for this mark. And this is also the 1st of June. This is the same as this is an outward cover to Lyon, France. It's an unpaid letter with the same mark on the back. This is the last date known by Webb. And now this is a new find. Unfortunately, it's a fake. 1860. this cover actually originated from Goldsmith's collection. It was sold by Interasia some years ago. And it's got, but it's very interesting cover because it has not got any Hong Kong arrival marking on the back. Now, the reason why is probably it was carried by like something like a diplomatic bag, like an army bag, maybe official bag, because it's addressed to HMS Melville, so it's maybe it's a naval bag or something, and they carry all these letters, and actually it has given the opportunity to the forger to add something on the back to make this a wonderful rarity. But this is actually, I must admit that I actually bought the cover, and then when it arrived, I say no, actually I didn't pay a lot for it, and so I said, oh gosh, I had a bargain from the auction, and but when I looked at it closely, the c.d.s actually is like an inkjet print. It's actually print out is actually a total fake. And I had a difficult time actually to convince the auction house to say that this is a fake, because they said that this is from a famous correspondence, and it's not possible that there's no Hong Kong arrival marking on the back because it was sent to Hong Kong. So I didn't actually take it to an expert to be expertise, but it just looked pretty obvious when you use a high power lens just to look at the c.d.s, and you can see ink dots actually making up the c.d.s, and there's no date in the middle. So it's a rare c.d.s, but you need to find the right item to put it on, and it's kind of within that 58-59 period. So here's the table. Now, how many we've got? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 covers. You can see that in 58, there's no index letter, which Dr. Stronfeld classified as type 12. And from April 1859, it has an index C, and then you've got the month before the date configuration. So that's so far is my survey, and obviously there could well be more undiscovered examples amongst our viewers' collections, which are probably maybe sold privately by stamp dealers and something. Well, it's interesting, c.d.s, but it has a very short lifespan of only 2 years. Why? Maybe it was lost, it was damaged, but there's no reason why it should be withdrawn. But if you look at the date, the day of the week, I mean, a lot of them actually are used on Sundays and Mondays. I mean, maybe because those days there were a lot of mail coming in, and they need a second CD, additional clerk to work, and they have to issue them with a c.d.s, maybe. I don't know. So it just dawns on to me that, why this c.d.s is so scared, but the fact that you could be not only scared, it's also if you find something actually in the auction market, you fetch a very high price too. So anyway, I'm really glad that if you have an example in your collection, or that people have, and it's just if it's not actually on my list, I would really dearly like to expand my list. Okay, so that's my little talk. It's still, obviously, it's ongoing survey, so I'm going to stop sharing. Any questions?
Not a question, but a comment.
Yeah,
you're about the third person within the last month or so that I've heard, Hong Kong presentations of one sort or other, who are doing surveys. And I was thinking, why couldn't the website have a section of surveys being done by members. And then the membership can go and say, hey, I got one of those.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
why couldn't the website do that?
Sure, I'm sure it can be done. I'm quite happy actually to put it to give it to Frank and put it on the website. Yeah, it's certainly very helpful for collectors, and I don't know about the pricing. it might suddenly dawn on to people that it's not as rare as it is previously thought, and the price start coming down. But you know, it's very useful. I'm sure of it. And yeah, I'm going to. Unfortunately, Frank is not here, so I'll let him know. I think it's a very good idea. Well, I love doing surveys. I mean, I've done previous surveys before with the Royal Arm, c.d.s. It's a lot of work, I know, but you just have to just go through all the catalogs and ask people whether they've got examples in their collection.
Yeah, but more eyes, the better.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
more people.
But once it's published,
yeah.
you start getting all the people start writing to you and say, hey, you missed out 3 you haven't got, and then that is how you could actually expand the knowledge. Yeah. Right. Okay. So.
Well, excellent.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I think it's tend to be a rather boring subject because I think very few people actually. I suspect that maybe just 1 or 2 bidders are keen buyers of this cancellation, and they keep. I'm not saying they're knocking the price up, but if there are only 2 buyers, maybe in the whole world, they're wanting something like that. The price will end up very high. Anyhow, but hey, it's nice.
It only takes 2.
Yeah, all you need is 2.
It only takes 2 to tango.
Yes. I've tried many years ago, trying to get an example, but it's already at that time the price is already very pricey. But now looking at a kind of 6-figure sum, I say no way.
You're poor.
I'm very content with just
a
scan. Anyhow,
Andrew, your poor internet there. You've got to give it a good threatening with a glass of water or something, saying work or else. It's really causing you problems. You break up a lot, but you're doing fine. You're a real trooper. Keep up.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I think next time,
fault.
my office is better. This is my home. I think there might be a lot of people actually using the internet at this time. So I'm really sorry about that.
Yeah.
I noticed that actually Dr. Cobb is actually listening to the Zoom meeting. Would you like to say a few words, Dr. McCall?
Well, thank you for both Michel and Dr. Andrew for the nice presentation. It's very interesting to see, and even though I have the book, but listening to your presentation is much nicer and easier to understand. And you mentioned about the last day usage, 28th of June. Yeah, it's quite a surprise not seeing one real in use postal usage. But I think you also have the one like a philatelic cancellation, right?
Well, there's a postal stationery card.
Yeah, yes,
with
right.
a different B, but that, according to, oh God, I forget his name. He'll come back to me. He thinks that was done at the post office in Singapore to sell to collectors. It never got in use.
Yes, because I've seen, and then I think they also numbered in a pencil, right? 1 of 20 or 3 of 20, something like that.
That I don't know.
Yes.
That I don't know. If you have examples, you got my email address on the back of the book.
Well, I have friends who got it. So
I'd love to see it.
Yes, I've asked for the copy and send to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for acquiring my book.
Oh, yes, you're welcome. My pleasure. So glad that because lots of information in that, so it helps a lot. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for joining the meeting. And I think without further ado, I would like to make an announcement that we're going to take a summer vacation in August. And then we will be back in September. Okay, so while
You broke up there, Andrew.
oh
Sorry.
dear, oh no, not again. No, right, okay.
It's fighting you right to the end.
I
right to
know.
the end.
Yeah.
Send us an email.
Yeah, okay. So it's
All right.
goodbye for me. Okay. Okay, and see you in September. Okay, bye-bye.